2004, in the early times before it was actually that many killings, the president promised that he wouldn't fund the Janjaweed, which is the Arab group that is trying to make the entire country Arab only. So the United Nations Security Council finally forces him in 30 days to stop funding them, stop training them, stop paying them to actually do this. He's giving them an actual stipend and food and location in the house and shelter. And the United Nations Security Council tells him or else, but obviously he doesn't listen to them. He feels as though he's not causing a genocide. He's just making sure that the country is united and staying together as a whole, that there isn't any chaos coming from the rebels, which are majority Africans. He just feels as though it's a coincidence. He's not going against a certain race. So in September of 24, the U.S. Security of State, Colin Powell, goes to Darfur himself. He interviews all these people, and he leaves a set of, I guess, spies, as we would say, and they just investigate on exactly what's happening. And from his reports, he realizes that this is a genocide, this is ethnic cleansing, and that the United States needs to do something about it. So he goes up to the United States, and he's just like, hey, we need to call this a genocide. He convinces them, and then they finally agree as the United States that it's a genocide, where they feel like it's their duty to do something to help Darfur and all those thousands of people that are dying every day, every second, who are just suffering. But despite all the U.S. thinks about this being a genocide, the world as a whole is a bit confused. We have the Arab League and the African Union, which sees it just as a struggling country. They're saying, hey, no, Sudan's not in a genocide. Sudan's not in anything. They're just suffering. They're just starting new. They're still on the rock. Nothing's going to happen. And like Brian said, there's all these nations who don't feel like they need to intervene on Sudan for personal reasons, where you have China and Egypt get their oil from Sudan. You have Russia, who doesn't want to have an input on anything because Russia itself at the time is invading into other nations trying to get other supplies. And as a whole, the United Nations doesn't declare it a genocide, and they don't side with U.S. because at the same time, this is a time where the U.S. is invading in Iraq, and they're feeling that the U.S. just wants to get in other people's business, which is why they don't feel like they support U.S.'s decision to get into Sudan. But Africa as a whole decides, Africa as a whole as a continent needs to do something for Sudan. So Chad, the neighboring country, which is right aside to the west of Darfur, allows all these refugees to come in. And like Tafari said, 2.5 million actually transferred to Chad. But with all those Africans and Southerns in that area, the Janjaweed feels a sense of an accomplishment. They feel like they need to go into Chad and terrorize these people once again. So not only is there problems in Darfur, there's now problems in Chad. And in fact, the atrocities and the violence is even worse in Chad, that people are actually fleeing back to Darfur. So it's a back and forth of, hey, there's problems in Darfur, let's go to Chad. Now there's problems in Chad, we need to go back to Darfur. So the entire African community and Southerns are just confused on what to do and how their future will be. So by 2004, they try to sign a peace agreement, which the government signs, but some of the rebels sign and some don't. Like Tafari said, there's two rebel groups. There's the SLA and the GEM. And part of the GEM signs it, but the other groups feel actually inferior and feels angry that they're even signing a peace treaty. So more rebel groups start forming and more groups start breaking up, and more people are just angry with the entire government. And despite that peace treaty was signed, violence still occurred. Nothing really changed. And Africa as a nation decided that, hey, we'll send some troops in, we'll try to make the peace, we'll maintain the peace, we'll do whatever we do. None of the countries fall through. They promised to send about 7,000 troops, not one came, but the only country that actually tried to help was Ethiopia, where they sent only 5 helicopters. Not much help. So right now the UN, in 2007, decided to send about 26,000 troops. Only if Sudan agreed to have these people in. Sudan finally agrees, but Sudan has certain criteria where they want them both to be just African descendants, and two, that they have no right to disarm anyone. So you have about 26,000 people just standing there doing nothing because they don't have the order to do anything. So there's not much for them to do. There's not much help going around. By 2008, a New York reporter investigates about Darfur. He's a bit confused on what's happening. And, I wasn't gonna swear. Okay, but he's a bit confused, and then he uncovers all these hidden records from the United Nations, which is keeping it hidden that Sudan is actually getting money to ship in weapons, and a lot of weapons at that. So he's like, okay, you have all these weapons where they're being used. There's obviously genocide going on, and like everyone's in denial on this. So specifically in the United States, George Clooney, as anyone knows, and I don't know his name. I think it's like Ron, the guy from Hotel Rwanda or Brooklyn's Finest.
Oh, Brooklyn's Finest.
Yeah. So they decided to make a documentary about what's happening in Darfur to inform not only the United States, people around the country, and they actually go to China, they go to Egypt, and they go to all these countries, talk to their government, and say, hey, you need to stop being like so shady. You need to realize that this is a genocide. You need to do something in it. And right now we have the trailer where they, which basically says what the movie is all about.
How can we move forward so that these people don't die?
What we have seen is deliberate targeting of civilians. Women were being raped, villages were being bombarded.
You learn about what's happened in the past, what happened in Nazi Germany, and here we've got a chance to make it right, and we've just fallen flat on our faces.
Don't you know the time for words has drawn to a close, and action desperately needs to take its place.
My mandate is to investigate and prosecute the worst crimes in Darfur.
My job is to provide food to save lives. It's part of my responsibility as a human being.
Stop the genocide in Sudan and Darfur at the moment, sir? Okay. What's going on over there? It's absolutely critical to ensure that our tax-paying dollars aren't supporting and funding this genocide.
I got an email from George Clooney. He was going to be going on a trip to China, then to Egypt.
Our call today is that priorities be linked to human survival, not political process. Prosecution has concluded that Ahmad Haroun and Ali Kushir bear criminal responsibility for alleged crimes against humanity and war crimes.
You do it right here.
There you go.
I'm signing two bills that will send a very clear message that California does not stand for murder and genocide.
Indifference is complicity.
But anyways, it just shows how much the world cares about Darfur. Even though we all can't make a difference, we can all at least be aware of what's going on and how we can play a role in this. So at this time, also the world set a certain day, which is January 9th of actually 2009, last year, that it was the Darfur Awareness Day. So people in DC, people in New York, people in LA all started these these little marches, and they started going to the street trying to inform everyone, and it became a day where everyone needs to unite as a world to stop any future deaths, any future murders and killings. So like the document said, finally, after some time, the president was charged for his crimes. So the International Criminal Court, or better known as the ICC, finally gives out an arrest warrant for the president and 2 other Sudanese suspects, which were the lieutenants of the Janjaweed, or the 2 main lieutenants of the Janjaweed. And it was the first arrest warrant that the ICC has done ever. And so there